1. And the analysts are in this morning. It's Mr. C and AB Bozimo. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, President Zibby. Good morning, Omatseye. Good morning, Mr. C. And hello to all of the wonderful listeners out there. Have a great week ahead.
Good morning, Zibby. Good morning, Omatseye. Good morning, AB. Good morning.
All right, let's start off with the headline coming from Daily Trust. Nigeria to end fuel importation by June, and this is according to Dangote.
Okay, thank you, Zibby. So, Mr. Aliko Dangote was speaking at the Africa's CEO Forum, the annual summit which held in Kigali, Rwanda, on Friday. And he was informing the participants and people who tuned into the conversation that his refinery, which is located in the Lekki area of Lagos, would start supplying petrol by June 2024. Yes, you heard that correctly. That is according to Mr. Dangote. Now, he informs the participants at the forum that they had already started supplying diesel and aviation fuel. That is correct. Now, he says that by sometime in June, 4 or 5 weeks, he wasn't specific as to the particular date. Nigeria will no longer need to import petrol. Now, on paper, this is brilliant news. And who better to say this than the owner of the refinery or the major shareholder of the corporation that owns the refinery? But however, it's a little bit more technical than that. We've been treated to reports by the Minister of State for Petroleum, Mr. Heineken, Senator Heineken Lokpo-Biri, who has at multiple fora clearly stated that Nigeria does not have crude oil to supply the refineries in Nigeria. And that includes the state-owned refineries, the refinery in Lekki, and even the refinery that is coming up in Okwela in Edo State. Now, the bigger question is this. We are aware that the Dangote refinery recently put out a tender to buy crude oil from America. And it's for a 12-month period, and they're looking to buy 2 million barrels each month. The question is this, for the petrol that he has promised will be out by June, sometime in June, have you already received the crude oil required to be refined? Because, ladies and gentlemen, today is the 20th of May. So literally, we're talking 4 weeks, 5 weeks, which takes us to about the third week, fourth week of June. Now, this is a refinery that has long been in the works. So I'm going to stop here and I'm going to say, okay, let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Luckily, June is next month. It's not next year or 2 years away. We will see whether Nigeria puts an end to the importation of petrol. And I want to add one more thing. There's this expectation in certain quarters that once his refinery starts producing petrol, that the price of petrol will go down. Sorry, it's not going to happen. But for two reasons. One, his refinery is located in a free trade zone. Whatever is produced in that zone is treated as an import. It's not going to be treated as a locally produced good. Two, he's taking loans to build that refinery. Some of those loans are denominated in US dollars. He's not going to cut his nose to spite his face because Nigerians want cheaper petrol. But next month is not far away, fingers crossed.
All right, thanks for that, Mr. C. Let us know your thoughts. All right, AB, did you want to add to that?
I will say, in a spirit of positivity, that when next month rolls around, we will have the opportunity to test this proposal or this statement. It's already great with the refinery that he's producing a lot of other derivatives, polypropylene, polythene, and other things that are also good for, what's this thing? The farm inputs.
Fertilizer.
Fertilizer. So there's every possibility with the size of the refinery and all its production lines. There is a lot that can be done. But again, we wait to see because it's a matter of a few days away. And we've heard these promises before. If that happens, there's also a risk because he's taking market away from our former suppliers. So he should be aware that some of the current people who are dependent on Nigeria's dysfunction for decades will not be happy. He should just be aware of that, as should the nation.
But also, looking at the story also, it seems Aliku also throws his weight when he speaks about, this is quoting him now, and he says, our refinery is quite big. It is something that we believe that Africa needs. And if you look at it, it says it's only about the only Algeria and Libya, maybe just slightly above it. So it seems like the capacity is there. So if the
In
capacity
fact,
is there,
I mean, he says that apart from Libya and Algeria, every other single country in Africa imports. So he is certainly poised right now with that refinery to supply Africa's needs from, let's say, within the area. But he's still, a bit constrained by the fact that though Nigeria produces oil, all of our oil is already committed to other people for decades. And so that's why we're hearing the stories of him having to import. The ridiculousness of that is unbelievable. And we're not even meeting our quota. If we're now producing beyond our quota, we could have the extra to give him. Sad parts of the story.
so, Abi, let's go over to the Vanguard newspaper that's before you, and it speaks of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, withdraws circular on cyber security levy.
When that happened, it was announced some weeks ago, I asked the question. I asked whether if that levy wasn't made, we would not expect cybersecurity in Nigeria. And since then, all sorts of other people have weighed in on it. And finally, the government, through the CBN, has decided to withdraw it. I feel that it was though it looks tiny, 0.5 or is it 0.05%, it looks tiny, but the point was, how was it going to be actually spent? Was there a ceiling, a figure that was, or was it just going to become another slush fund? So I feel the right thing has been done. Other countries that have much higher cybersecurity standards do not have such a levy. I saw one infographic that showed many of the other countries that have no such levy. It almost looks as if those in policy positions in Nigeria are just looking for any title to tack onto one more charge. And that is something that has gone on. The CBN has been very rapid in sending out all sorts of circulars in the past few months, since this administration started. And it seems as if there's a lot of ideas running around, but what is the big central policy? And do a lot of those economic policies apply in an economy like Nigeria's that has fallen to the fourth in Africa, by the way, and where a lot of the money is not under control? What do I mean? During the season of currency change, you had all sorts of huge amounts being brought into banks from the wilderness, literally. And the reports then suggested very positive things where billions were brought from outside of the banking system into the banking system. We have since canceled that policy, and I bet a lot of that money has migrated out. And the point about that is, therefore, that many of the very good economic policies that work in a more regulated economy may not be applicable here. So when you find a lot of these CBN policies and economic policies being rolled out, they may not be as effective in Nigeria because Nigeria is not a model that you can benchmark against some of the other foreign. We have to come up with homegrown solutions. Well, happily for us, they have withdrawn this. Just policy out, policy in, garbage in, garbage out. It's gone for now. They've withdrawn it for now.
So, AB, just before Mr. C would chime in on it, just look at it. Before this circular by the CBN, the president has also weighed in on it. So, are we looking at it? If the president had not weighed in on it to say scrap it or suspend it for now, the CBN was waiting for the green light.
Some people were saying, "Oh, he's a listening president." Ideally, he should have listened to advice before that circular was put out, and it should never have occurred at all. So I'm not impressed. If he had to weigh in on it, where was the CBN? Did they not have the initiative on their own to realize that it wasn't a good policy? I'm not impressed by that. Whether it weighs in or not, they have a job to do. They should do it and do it well.
Okay, so very quickly, I'm going to jump in on this. Again, sorts of scandalous, and we have the same NSA's office again involved in simply something that should not happen. Now, it's instructive in all of this that we miss the bigger issues. This whole thing kickstarted based on a memo from the NSA to the CBN governor. In what universe does that happen? The CBN governor is not under the NSA's office. He should not, at best, he should have directed the NSA to go back to the president. And then we were then treated to the most scandalous and ridiculous explanation that the president was not carried along. So again, it points to the fact that due process is not being followed. And because due process is not being followed, we're being treated to ridiculous moments.
Coming through. Chukwemeka says, why is the nation dependent so much on, why are we as a nation depending so much on one individual to progress? What happened to our local refineries? The government should fix those. Adewale says, if this was said by a politician, I'd have doubted hugely, but it's Dangote, hopefully. JP says, it takes about 14 to 21 days to import crude. The process is to get naphtha, then gasoline. It's doable. On pricing, export and local sales will strike a balance alongside other distillates and derivatives. It's a shame the NNPC can't provide crude. Abel says, no more petroleum imports by Dangote. Fuel prices are not decreasing either. So what are the fringe benefits for Nigerians? Let's move on to the next headline. You can keep the messages coming 0809 440 981. From Punch, ASU kicks as FG unveils tertiary institutions governing council.
Okay, thank you, Zibby. So sometime last year, the president dissolved the governing councils of universities and colleges of education and the federally owned polytechnics. And recently, they've just been reconstituted, and we understand that the swearing in will take place later this week. Now, we're treated to a story where ASU is supposedly kicking against the move that they had asked the federal government to reconstitute the illegally, unlawfully dissolved governing councils rather than reconstituting fresh ones. Now, I don't understand what is meant by ASU kicks. They said that they've instituted an action in court challenging the legality of the government steps, because I hope they're not trying to subject Nigerians to another harrowing round of strikes, given the fact that there are people in their final year waiting and hoping to graduate. Now, ASU needs to stop kicking in the public space. There are legal steps to take. Not that there's a lot of confidence in the judiciary at this point, but because it's not election related, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. File an action in court, challenge the legality of the government's actions, quote the necessary sections of the acts establishing these institutions, and hopefully, if you present a good case, the court will see reason with you and grant you the order you seek. But seeking to kick publicly, I'm not sure what that is supposed to achieve. And I do hope this is not leading to a strike, because this will be most regrettable.
You're still listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. Stay with us. The conversation continues.
Music is life, and life is music. Here on Smooth 98.9. Go buy a new sound. Don't touch that dash.
There's a button you press in that studio that makes Mr. C's voice so clear for me. Whatever it is, please keep it up. Because when it starts, it's kind of muffled, but eventually when you do something, it becomes clear.
Sorry?
There's
a button or something you press in the studio that makes Mr. C's voice very clear for me to hear. So please help me do that as often as possible, anytime he's speaking.
This is Justin EJ signing out. This is Johnny Drill, and you're listening to the Smooth Breakfast Show.
We're Smooth 98.1 FM. It's still freshly pressed, and we've got AB Bozimo still with us and Mr. C this morning as we pick up the local headlines and dissect. Of course, getting you to get your thoughts across on the WhatsApp platform on 0809 444 0981. You can also catch a live stream of this on youtube.com/smooth981 FM Lagos. That said, so we put ASU to rest for now and hoping that the 2 weeks lapsing for the strike for over no work, no pay. Let's see how they resolve this. In addition to this governing council constitution right now. AB, you've got a little to add to it before we get into your paper?
No, like Mr. C said, I don't know how effective strikes are, and they should always think of the people who suffer from the strikes. They asked for governing councils to be composed. Literally the next day, 555 people were announced, and immediately they have a problem with it. Yes, there is a legal way to go about a dispute. Go to court.
Go to court. So when two elephants fight, they say the grass suffers, but when a donkey kicks, you know what it is. You wish you survive it. But let's move on and get the Punch newspaper. AB, Tinubu forms committee to boost green economic initiative.
Yes, it is undeniable the impact and effects of global warming, and the entire world, well, the world as we know it, is doing everything, making efforts to move towards a more carbon neutral future with a lot of different sustainable energy and green economic initiatives. So this is basically trying to ensure you have energy transition. I'll just step back from the immediate headline and say, what is this all about? The president has inaugurated a presidential committee on climate action and green economic solutions 11 months after inauguration. There is a certain immediacy to certain things that were done, like the removal of the subsidy, like the floating of the naira, like the buying of the SUVs. That is taken 11 months to do this. You wonder how important it is in the big picture. Along the way, he has made, he has announced people on the board of it and all that. We're trying to now have electric buses rolled out. And I'm asking myself, everything is connected. If you want to have electric buses, great. So you are no more. And we've also heard about the CNG bus rollout a couple of weeks ago. All these are great ideas. But don't you need to have the infrastructure in place? You have electrical buses. Do you have electricity with which to charge them? Then we're talking about an eco-friendly future. Definitely, we do need an eco-friendly future. We want to be part of the greater world where United Nations is pushing these initiatives for all of our sake. Global warming is causing havoc to agriculture, it's causing flooding and other things. But I just hear a lot of announcements and announcements. There's no lack of good ideas in Nigeria. There's none whatsoever. But the question becomes, how do we execute after these ideas? And then you're talking about the Green Initiative. You need the people to be alive and thriving to take advantage of what benefits these initiatives can give. As it stands right now, the only green that will be the grass that will grow on the dead bodies of Nigerians if we're not made to survive and thrive. I agree 100% with this. I'm actually a sustainable energy expert. So this is my thing. But step by step, Mr. President, put in place the economic ability for people to take advantage of these excellent ideas and policies. There's something of a cart before horse thing. When you have a band A that's not functioning and you're trying to get electric buses, how does this rhyme? I mean, so it's not about announcing these things. You need to put in place the infrastructure and indeed the entire context that would make these laudable policies work. That is the gap I see. I hear every day a new headline, a new idea put out there. What has happened to ordinary fundamentals before you get to these very important subsequent initiatives? That's just the gap that concerns me. But in terms of having green energy and economic initiatives, superb idea. But the people have to be prepared to take advantage of them. That is the missing link. And I need assurances that that is kept highly in view before I'll be able to have confidence that these additional steps will make sense in the economy that we're dealing with, the fourth in Africa now.
Okay, sorry. Quick sentence. Where's the funding coming from?
Now let's move on to the next headline, and this comes from Vanguard. minimum wage, why we may not accept 100,000 naira, and this is according to organized labor. Okay?
Okay, thank you, Zibby. So we've known for months that the national minimum wage has to be reviewed. The last wage was fixed in 2019 and it was for 30,000 naira. Now it's clear even to the blind that 30,000 naira is not working, cannot work, and will never work. It didn't work in 2019. It's not going to work now. Now we know that certain states implemented what they called wage support packages, like Lagos, like Edo. Now, by April, we were supposed to have announced a new minimum wage. April has come and gone, no minimum wage. Now, last week, representatives of labor met with the government, the 37-member tripartite committee, and we were treated to something that
the 1 billion panel, right? Or
yeah, the 1
500
billion
million.
no,
Okay.
their budget was 1 billion. They started off with 500 million, and you would think
Only.
with 500 million, they would even come up with a figure. Last week, we were treated to the nonsense that they suggested 48,000 naira as new minimum wage. That is totally unacceptable. Now, Labour is saying they won't accept 100,000 naira, and I agree. In Nigeria today, anything short of at least 300, 400,000 is not flying. Yes, previously I've argued that it doesn't make sense economically, but then that is the ideal. You find the same political class expending money on frivolous items, frivolous line items, on things that do not really matter, things that do not immediately improve the quality of lives of Nigerians. Now, what is 100,000 naira supposed to do? Because let's break it down so that everyone understands. 100,000 naira a month is 3,000 naira a day. What proper meal would you have for 3,000 naira a day? So, in summary, this is where I'm going, right? 100,000 naira is not going to cut it. There's a meeting fixed for today. Let us hope the government attends that meeting and is serious with its recommendations. But 100,000 naira, 48,000 naira, not workable, not acceptable.
The thing is this, everything has to be seen in context. Like Mr. C said, it's not necessarily a matter of funding, but a matter of prioritizing. The ruling class has prioritized utter irrelevant things that suit themselves. Vehicles, furniture, wardrobe allowances, newspaper allowances for many who may not be able to read thoroughly, and so on and so forth. And in the face of that, in contrast with that, they have a committee budgeting 1 billion, cutting it down all the way to 500 million, cannot even come up with a solution, and then they offer 48,000 in the face of what people are facing. This is where I go back to the earlier story. Green initiatives and all that, they are great, but people are literally living in hunger right now. There is no middle class. There is no middle ground. You're either a ruler of Nigeria or you're a peon. And the Labour is saying these numbers, in contrast with what the people in office allegedly earn, are unacceptable. So it's a matter of optics. You cannot have convoys of bulletproof and non-bulletproof vehicles running in the 300 million naira range and be saying that people should manage. That is it. You come with a cabinet of 48 people, with each
50,
of the ministers having 4 vehicles to themselves. And then you are telling us to tighten our belt. It does not sound plausible. That's the problem. Context and contrast.
Gentlemen, but in the midst of this minimum wage issue, looking at 100 or 300 as you suggested, and the government saying 48, we face a greater choice of having, galloping inflation that might result as a result of having wages get as much as that, because it will trigger another round of prices going up in the country. So would you rather have this amount, but with things affordable, than have the prices go up?
And that, to me, is where the government has to make things affordable, provide the infrastructure to make production and supply and delivery and logistics come down, and prices will go down. You cannot raise price of fuel and expect a person who put yams in a vehicle not to add the money to the cost of yams. You cannot raise everything, then expect that only the salary should stay the same. A person who is a farmer cannot transport those things in their arms. They have to rent a vehicle. The cost of that transport is definitely going to be added to the goods. So when we talk about this inflation, more cash, create the context. And yes, I can earn 1 naira a month and be happy to share that into kobo across. But if the cost of everything is higher, you cannot expect to earn that 1 naira a month anymore. They are responsible for the price increases because they've let go of everything but have refused to put things in place to keep prices down. And we're not talking about price controls only. Those are artificial and won't work in the long term.
Let's race down to the lane where we find messages waiting. Emeka from Ikeja says, when do we start to distinguish between Dangote private refinery and Nigeria's unseen refineries? As Dangote finally taking over our refineries, Emeka from Ikeja spoke this morning. And then Fidelis would send in a message saying, would the cybersecurity charge have taken care of this? There was a case where my friend in London's account was hacked and some amounts taken from the account with the translation that she bought some items when she went to the bank to report, and it was identified that she was innocent. The bank returned her money and followed up with the scammer. That's a country that thinks. This is the Lagos template, and that's the only document that they have to implement. You can never give what you don't have. That's Fidelis from Shomolu sending a message. Ajayi Oloniluwa's thought this morning saying, it's one thing for the CBN to withdraw the offending cybercrime security levy circular, and it's another thing for whoever is responsible to be sanctioned, as is done in Sena Crimes. Ajayi Oloniluwa from Magodo GRE Sherry, and Tajuddin sends in from Alimasho says, Mr. C is being civil about the NSA to CBN. The people at the helms are gangster operating a paddy government. Then Damidola says, well, from Lagos Island to Mr. C, is it that all our crude is encumbered, so none for Dangote or the opposition elements are deep in the crude theft? The same elements that are publicly against the government. And Chika will come up with a message here. And Zibby, and then it goes on, the assertion that by Dangote that Nigeria will stop fuel importation by June is another wishful thinking. The question is, how many liters of fuel can his refinery produce in a day? Bearing in mind that the NNPC have constantly told us Nigeria consume 50 million liters per day. Secondly, what happened to the existing and budget NNPC have already made with the foreign refineries? Finally, the reason why this assertion by Dangote will not work is that diesel still being sold at 1,500 above, even though Dangote have told us that it should be sold at 1,200. In all this, where is the refinery that the government have budgeted billions of dollars for turnaround maintenance?
All right. We are out of time. Unfortunately, we can't read all your messages this morning, but thank you for listening. Thanks for sending them through. And special thanks to our analysts for being here with us as well, Mr. C and AB Bozimo, for joining us.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure. You may agree or disagree with me. Hit me up at AB Bozimo on all platforms. Have a great week ahead again.
Thank you for having me and have a great week ahead.
Stay with us. There's a lot more to come. The free breakfast.